if you're
Yeah, it's a great
okay,
idea. Cool.
are we live? We're guessing that we are. So still working out the technical kinks. Hello, Karen. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Doing all right. Happy Friday to our audience, those that are joining us for this adventure as we continue to uh, figure out the technical components of multi-platform, omni-channel live web streaming, because
I
that's
know.
what we're
And so
doing.
that people understand what Lenny and I are dealing with, we're recording in a platform. We're not recording directly in LinkedIn. So we just face ambiguity every single time where we're like, we don't really know what's happening.
We do a big shout out to our team for helping. Today, Carly, this function is producer. Um, the we're going to get it right. Theoretically, you're able to watch this on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, or
Right.
Twitter. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
let's watch it
No,
on all three at once. But
X. It's X.
X, that's right, X.
No, but
So
the thing is, even if we have a glitch with the live, they will be living in our YouTube channels. So I'm sure our marketing team will promote that after the fact. So if you found us and you're listening, cool. And, always know that for the future, if there's any kind of a tech glitch, we will be having a playlist on our YouTube channel. Therefore, people can always go back and re-listen to the episodes. So we
yep,
should be
there we
ready to
go.
rock and roll.
On that note,
On that note, all
yeah.
right, all right.
So
So
what do we got on the agenda this week?
The agenda. I love that it's an agenda. I think the really interesting thing is that this week everything that caught our eye had to do with data. Or not everything, but most things had to do with data. So we're going to kick things off talking about data quality, and then we're going to stroll right into data privacy also, because those were really the two big themes resonating. So from a data quality standpoint. And I believe Carly, our producer, is about to share a link into our stream there. But what caught our attention was Seema Vasa's podcast, Data Gurus. Now, I'm also a bit of a brand fan because I've been on that podcast, and I think you have been too, right?
Yep, yep.
So, like, for those of you listening, just because it says like Data Gurus, it doesn't mean it's only data and analytics. I was a qualitative researcher, and she hosted me for a great conversation as well. So it's really great for the industry. It's a good podcast. So shout out right there. But the episode in particular we're talking about today is when she had guests John Bremer at Fan and Force Solutions and Bob Fawson at Numerator on recently. And they were talking about improving data quality, right? So that's a concept that we've talked about before, but there was an interesting point of view shared on that show. I'll read the quote, Lenny, and then I do want you to riff on it a little bit. But technological innovation has made accessing and analyzing data easier than ever. And that democratization has had the unintended effect of devaluing industry expertise and when it comes to analytics that drive insight. And the point was made that so many of today's insights professionals are really leaning in heavily to their technological advances and what their platform is capable of doing, which is leading to just again this idea of devaluing the consultative benefit of working with somebody else. Where's the thought leadership? Where's the expertise? So we just both thought it was a really interesting concept
Yep.
and figured we should talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, shout out to SEMA, shout out to Bob and John. I mean, John, for those who don't know, he was the I think head of methodology and innovation at NPD for a long time. Bob, of course, from Dynata and out Numerator. So I mean, these guys, they're classical researchers. They're our generation. So and have worked up through this transformation, this technological transformation, and it's an issue that has come up. It started with DIY. It accelerated with automation. It's really accelerating now with the advent of that word.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that two-letter word.
The two-letter word.
Let's see if we can not mention it on this one. I don't think we
I
can.
know we are like not talking about AI today. We're talking about
Oh,
data.
you said it.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so we lost already. And the point is, there is this transformation. Technology is supposed to make tasks easier, and lots of research is task oriented. Um, and what is the delineation between skill set and task? I think as a qualitative researcher, you may have a really, that's probably cleaner for you, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of tool agnostic,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and we have always struggled. I say we. many people in the field have struggled with, what's a finding versus an insight, and how do you take what you heard in a qualitative setting and turn it into a recommendation? And it just seems that that's what's happening potentially in kind of the data space is let's make sense of the data. Yeah, sure, great. We have great tools to show us data maybe in different ways or help us to get new ways of understanding. But you have to take that understanding if you're going to kind of win as a supplier partner and turn it into directives and informed decision making. So
Yeah. Well, actionable insights with
Yeah.
and that's that. I think that's the crux of what we're
Yeah.
struggling with here, right?
Yeah.
Is we've automated methodological issues. We have best practices. You can get a best of breed ad tracker on platforms like Zappy and everybody else who's leading the automation. I mean, everybody's doing it now. The what's our IP? Right?
Yeah.
And we've always talked about being more consultative and focusing on implications and outcomes, but those are not the skill sets that many research professionals of our generation were taught, right? We were methodologists, we were data
Right.
analysts, we weren't really focused on that idea of implications and outcomes. But if we look at the data, no pun intended,
Yeah.
from Grit, actually, we research suppliers are scored very high on kind of the front end process components. The dissatisfaction levels that always exist is on that back end. So, how do we tell the story on what's the real finding, the actionable insight, and then what do we do now with that?
Yeah.
And I think we're only going to continue to see some real tension there.
Yeah.
And one last point, I agree with John wholeheartedly on this, that we can't forget knowing how to write a good questionnaire,
Yeah.
how to ask a good question, how to develop a good sample.
Right.
Those things, technology may do most of the heavy lift,
Right.
but we need to know those things,
Right.
even as we upskill on this other component of, being more consultative, not just on the design, but on the implications.
Right.
And that's going to change the nature of the industry and the nature of the people that work in the industry.
Yeah. So it's like upskilling on the back end, but like doubling down on the skills required on the front end, which is,
Yeah. Even if the technology does it for us, we need to make sure it's like the conversations we've had about validation of findings from using synthetic sample, for instance. We need to be able to ask, we need to know enough to be able to identify whether something is good or not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and one of the interesting points, which we're not going to go too far down the rabbit hole, but that they brought up on this podcast episode was, we don't know how many bad decisions are made based on data that's not so much the data that's not good, but data that is overlooked, potentially, patterns that aren't found. So again, we don't know the bad. Those stories don't circulate out there like, oops, missed this one or missed a data point or misinterpreted this data. We don't know those stories. It would actually be really refreshing if we started to learn some of those, but I bet there's a lot of bad that's happened out there. So yeah, that skill, got to brush up on that.
I could rattle off some stories, and none of them are fun to go through.
No, but don't.
They were not fun. They were,
Yeah.
oh, my butt hurts after talking to the client type of stories.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I know that's one of the blessings of the qualitative caveat, right? Is like, there's always this is just what we gleaned in this data. There might be other things that we didn't glean, but it's very much, has that caveat over it. Whereas data doesn't have the same grace, right? There isn't the same, this is what we saw in the data. There might be other ways of looking at it. So it's a whole different playing field for real.
Yeah. Garbage in, garbage out. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah, I love that. We're going to segue into, the second kind of bucket that we're really going to talk about today, which is, that's sort of the data quality thing that caught our attention. But data privacy was also big in the news this week. Mm-hmm. And the two are linked, right? We often talk about data quality and data privacy as if they're the same, and they sort of are in the same world of, good data. But from a privacy approach, a couple of things happen. We learned from IA, for example, that the new, I'm going to read this specifically so I don't mess up the language, the new EU-US data privacy framework went live on the 17th. So what that means, for those of you who are listening and didn't see this from Insights Association, the European Commission declared that this will ensure an adequate level of protection comparable to that of the EU for personal data transferred from the EU to US companies under this new framework. How can you kind of give a more layman's approach to what that is for those people who are listening who didn't really know about some of these EU guidelines that they've strictly adhered to.
Sure. Well, so let's say you're an EU-based company, Philips, Unilever, whatever the case
Yeah.
may be, and you're doing national projects outside of the EU in the U.S. Great example. The there were two very different frameworks in dealing with data. The U.S. does not have something comparable to, let's say, GDPR.
GDPR, yeah.
There may be in certain states, but it's not national. So this process of forming a framework so that we could kind of normalize and work through some of those issues applied not just to market research industry, although that's certainly true. If you're doing a multinational study, now there are some standard procedures to ensure that what we're doing in the U.S. is comparable to what's happening in the EU, but it has big applications for advertising and marketing, right?
Yeah.
Anything programmatic. This was really a contentious point. If you remember when GDPR was first implemented, there were websites and companies that said, you can't get to us in Europe anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're not going to, because they simply were not going to, or were not prepared to deal with the implications of those data privacy regulations. So this framework helps that out. For us specifically, it's around how we handle data, who has access to it, the transmissibility, format, structure, all of those things that are relevant to data privacy. So it is a good thing, because it's now there's a standard that we can pay. We don't have to guess, but it does create an obligation for companies that are working internationally between the EU and the US that you need to pay attention to this and make sure that you're honoring it, because ultimately the buyers of research, they are responsible. So if we use the same example of, say Unilever, they're responsible. The supplier is responsible. Everybody below the supplier, who contributes
In that
is
whole
responsible.
chain. Yep.
Right. Everyone in the chain has an obligation and responsibility from an adherence standpoint.
Yeah.
So it's something that is important and needed, because it was a barrier to business.
Yeah. And brands, I feel like we talked about this last week, they really do rely on their partners to shore that stuff up. Like that, they're like, look, we need you to be taking care of this. This is important to our selection of partners, and we need to trust that. So not dissimilar from other conversations that you and I have had about this, but it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
What's interesting this week also, there was the connection made between that within our industry, but also two big things were happening around data privacy, kind of outside our industry. But there's a thread we're going to tie between the two. So one of them, we learned from TechCrunch that the California Privacy Protection Agency announced plans to review the data privacy practices that automakers are following and adhering to around all the data that these cars are taking in, from the cameras and the location sharing, the GPSs, the conversation that you may be having. Like, your cars are collecting data at an increasing rate at this point. So California is making sure, no, we're going to make sure we have privacy laws around, or guidelines around, the automakers. And then another thing that happened was Google is introducing some search updates to help users stay in control of what's out there in terms of their own personal information and kind of taking command of their own data privacy. So at the same time we're talking about data privacy inside the industry, it's also a thing outside our industry. Important for data everywhere. So my question for you to kind of kick us off is, what is this level of scrutiny that's happening everywhere? What does that mean for the insights professionals? Because it's happening everywhere. What does that mean for us?
Yeah, well, I think we've talked about this before. It's a topic near and dear to my heart because of all the work we did on Veriglyph. And last week, talking about WorldCoin, right? This idea of people owning their data as an asset and managing that. And that's just not how the Internet of Things, right?
Yeah.
This entire system has been built. So hence the regulations that are coming in to help give consumers more rights and control. And there's a future state where I still believe that we get to a place where there are mechanisms for consumers to own and manage their own data, even if they're not doing that like, fielding requests, right? But
Right.
there's systems in place that helps them to manage that. And that's what Google's moving towards, right?
Right.
And at least giving some control over it.
Yeah.
But we are not there yet.
Yeah.
And as the walls between insights and marketing come down, and they are, good,
Yeah.
bad, or indifferent,
Yeah.
as other players participate in the insight ecosystem, big tech companies particularly come to mind, Amazon and X and Facebook and Google, and there's a different obligation and viewpoint that they have on these things. And how that rolls down is if we are moving towards the platformification of research, and we are,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Who is going to be the Google of the insight space? Is it Qualtrics? Is it
Yeah.
SurveyMonkey? Is it Zappy? Is it
Yeah.
Forsta, Question Pro? Right. I mean, all these companies are all jockeying for position to kind of have that role of the hub, right?
Yeah.
And there's tons of them. So forgive me if I didn't name off all 100. Some companies, those were just kind of top of mind.
You can put in the comments like it's
That's
going to
right,
be
here.
us.
Right. Actually, so look at the one thing. A shout out. Our oh goodness, it was in the chat. There's a report just released from
Ipsos?
our not from Ipsos, from the data platform. Oh man!
It's all right. Just say your thought, then we'll go back and find it.
Okay, fine. Around all of this, they looked at the ResTech space, right? So all the companies I didn't mention, go there, you see all the ResTech companies. That was my
Yeah,
point. So,
yeah.
and we'll find it and give them a shout out for that because that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So in that
Signoi?
world,
Signoi.
it was
Nope,
not
not
Signoi.
Signoi.
Infotools. So
Infotools,
sorry.
there you go.
So sorry. Infotools Horse. Everybody, apologies. It's Friday. Brain fart.
This is a prototype.
That's right. So the point is, those companies are in an ecosystem just like every other technology ecosystem.
Yeah.
And where we get to is the point, and this particularly comes in the era of programmatic sample. Programmatic
Yeah.
sample utilizes the same backbone and infrastructure that programmatic advertising uses. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
In many cases, they are integrated, they are piggybacking.
Yeah.
So when you're going through that world and there is some level of PII that is being exchanged within those systems, even though a individual researcher may not see that, oh, this is Lenny Murphy, from a data privacy standpoint, a data management standpoint,
Yeah.
within that ecosystem, it is identified. And so there are obligations for us to look at how we participate in these data privacy models to ensure that we are giving people full, double opt-in opportunities, and this is the tough one, the right to be forgotten.
Right.
So, and that can be really, really, like in GDPR, that's a thing. So, somebody participating in a community, and let's say where they had an ethnographic mission,
Yep.
and they submitted images of their usage of some product.
Right.
In some of these frameworks, they have the right to say, I want that to be taken away. I
Yeah,
want that
yeah.
image to be erased.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are just big, thorny issues. And so that they are absolutely connected to this concept of data quality and data privacy. They're two
Right.
sides of the same coin. And
we know from
go ahead.
just consumer behavior in general, people are not really great at locking down their privacy settings on apps. So it's a lot to ask for them to think through this in advance. Like, certainly, with automobiles, I bet there's going to be plenty of people that have thought through that. But there are going to be a lot of people who are like, I never really thought about that. I never thought about my data and how the car was using it because I was so focused on the benefits when they sold me the car. So there's an kind of this ethical, moral obligation to make sure that consumers are informed that in areas that might be unknown to them. I think for a while there, remember we were told like Google yourself every now and then so you see what comes up. So I actually, applaud Google for like like thinking about that for us, because now there might be a mechanism for you to Google yourself and then say, I want these things deleted. It's like your credit report, right? It's the new credit report is the search report. And, how can we clean it up so that I'm in command of what's out there?
Right. And it's not just behavioral data, right?
Yeah.
The automotive thing, for example, so Affectiva company, its roots were in the research space. Their technology has been deployed in automotive. So as a fail-safe to help understand people's emotional states. So if somebody's road rage, right, it can shut down the car. I mean, that's a use case potentially.
You know who you are if you're listening. We know who he's talking about.
Yeah. So it's not just this behavioral data. It can be very intimate data, right?
Yeah.
Of your expressions and your emotional states. And it kind of goes back to what we talked about last week of like, is this some dystopian future? Well, it could be.
Yeah.
These frameworks that are being implemented are trying to limit that fear factor of that potential, dystopian, Orwellian, Big Brother is watching everything everywhere you are idea.
Yeah.
And that's a real legitimate concern.
Yeah.
So,
well, kudos to the companies that are putting out there some positive guardrails for the rest of us, and really, like, it just seems kind of wrapping up for us today, Lenny, because we've already talked 20 minutes.
Yep.
Here we are, it's heartening to know that there are good things happening in this space, and some of these guardrails are being put up for us as individuals.
There are, and we need to pay attention. And shout out to the trade associations. That is what they are there for.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
SMAR, Insight Association, MRS, they do a great job in doing that. Please support them. We look at it and try and interpret, but they're doing the heavy lift of advocating for these things and truly understanding what the implications are for their members and for the industry as a whole.
Yeah. Gosh, it's another time why I want to just end this episode by saying it's a good time to be alive. It's like, it's a good time to be in this industry because there's a lot happening. It's pretty cool.
There is. And it continues every day is a new adventure, right?
It is. Always with you.
And we're not even getting to the topics that I want to discuss.
Nope.
So
I'm just going to keep kicking that can down the road.
Keep kicking that can down the road. Although, one shout out real quick. Pay attention to the semiconductor stuff. We'll talk more about it in another thing. But there's some cool stuff happening that really does have implications for a lot of stuff. So we'll talk.
And people
next week.
we're out of time, but people can pick up that conversation on your LinkedIn.
Yes.
I think you shared that this morning. So head on over there if you want to talk about semiconductors, because it's interesting for sure.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
So,
that's it, I think.
That's our show today, friends. We will see you online. Let's just hope that this went live, Lenny.
I know. Well, it's not, it's a good recording. So
fingers crossed. Yeah, it's a good recording.
Yeah.
Give us the feedback if you want to give us the feedback, either here, there, or everywhere. You know how to get a hold of Lenny and I, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Everybody take care. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, friends.